All right. Well, good day, everyone. Welcome to one of PrimePay's monthly broker webinars. Today's webinar is titled Ride the HSA Wave. Yes, folks, it is May. And practically right around the corner here, summer is a-coming. And I'm sure many of you will be heading to the shores, heading to the beach, and really enjoying, actually, many waves. And if you have children, you're going to even enjoy it even better, right? But today we're going to be talking about another wave that is a-coming, and that's this HSA wave. So we are thrilled that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to sit with us today. I want to welcome you. My name is Steve Jackson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategic Development and Channel Sales here at PrimePay. And here, as of May of 2017, we have now been kind of presenting and producing these monthly broker webinars now for 9 years. This is our 9th anniversary here of doing this. So believe it or not, many of you, actually for many of those years, have joined us month in and month out. And we are grateful for that. And we want, our goal in providing these webinars each and every month is to provide strong content, strong education, but also strong practical application so that you can take this immediately and communicate it with your clients, drive strategies to your clients, and ultimately driving strong value-added solutions and needs here to fulfill the needs of your clients. So welcome, everyone. Let me just cover some of the logistics here before we get started. Here today. We do want to hear from you, but your lines are muted. Never fear. We have, there's a question box in your GoToMeeting menu bar, and we would love to have you type in a question as we go along today. There's a lot of great content here today, and some on the technical side and many others not. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, whether it's a particular thought about some of the topics today, or if you have a specific question, and we would love to answer that. As always, one of the most popular questions we receive is, are you recording this webinar? Can I have a copy of this webinar? We post a recording of all of our webinars on our public YouTube channel, and it's under our Broker Concierge channel, and I'd love for you to go ahead and check that out. It's usually posted generally by the Friday after, or at least a couple days after the webinar. So look for our follow-up email that will provide some additional information for you in regard where to find us. But that, we know many of you, maybe you can't attend the full hour here today. So at your leisure, you can go click on that and be able to view that at your own leisure as you go along. Also, though, exclusively for our Broker Concierge partners, we continue to build on the tools and resources that are found within our broker portal for our partners. And there you will receive a copy of this slide deck today, along with the recording, link to the recording, and further information here that I can explain here at the end. All right? So without further ado, I'd love to go ahead and get started because we've got a lot of content, and I also want to introduce our guest speaker here today. As many of you have known, I've tried to incorporate a few other experts, some gurus here that are part of our presentations here in 2017. And I am thrilled today to have my esteemed colleague, Brooke Lanier. She is the director of our benefit services, and she has worked here at PrimePay over the last 5 years, but has actually had over 10 years of experience in the pre-tax benefit account, COBRA, and compliance nature of employee benefits. She brings such a wealth of knowledge, but where we do want to take it today is that practical aspect of the knowledge and digging a little deeper into these solutions. And at least with today, I know that her passion sits with health savings accounts. And so I've asked Brooke to join us today. So Brooke, we are thrilled to have you and really appreciate you joining here today.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for that kind and very warm introduction.
All right, thank you, Brooke. All right, so as we look at the agenda here today, we want to cover 4 areas here, as we often do. There's typically 3 to 4 to 5 different areas that we want to cover on each and every webinar. One of the first things we do want to touch on here is just what is this HSA wave all about? Let's build a little bit of a foundation in this growth that has actually been coming along for quite some time, and it really truly now can become this powerful incoming HSA wave. So let's talk about that. I'm going to have Brooke really cover this HSA empowerment of consumerism. There are some key facts that I think you're going to want to think about. I want you to begin, as we go through the content here today, I want you to begin to think a little differently as it relates to an HSA. Don't think of it as an account, if you will, but it's really a valuable solution. It is a tool, and if used appropriately, if you sharpen that tool regularly, it can be very influential to what you need on a daily basis. So I'm going to have Brooke really touch in this empowerment of consumerism. We do want to just touch base, at least briefly, on some of the proposals that have been pushed forth. Where does the HSA climate fit into those proposals? And then lastly, we're going to follow up here with just some key HSA sales strategies. And I think, hopefully what we want you to, these are not the basic strategies. These are a little different. And so we do want you to think a little differently here as you focus some energy and time in this conversation about health savings accounts and what they can mean to you, your clients, but also certainly to the individuals that use it. So as we think about a wave, I want you to think about where it begins, right? Generally you see waves that are located on the ocean surface, right? I mean, that's where we think about it, right? And it's commonly caused by wind transferring its energy to the water. Okay, and so I want you to think about this drop of water. I keep showing this drop of water here because as you go back to when HSAs began, and you go back to the end of 2003, when the Medicare and Modernization Act was officially signed and came into being, HSAs kind of breathed life here at the beginning of 2004, and it truly was this drop of water. And when you think about that drop of water, watch what happens, right? So it starts to have this ripple effect, all right? And then from there, you're going to have wind. That wave, the size of the wave is going to depend, right, on a lot of different factors: wind speed, wind duration, the area in which it's covering, and where it's blowing. But ultimately, what we've seen over the last many years is that there's been this strong growth. It started with that drop, and it's absolutely beginning to lead to this, which is a massive wave. And when you start to look at some of the analytics, some metrics that we certainly will share today, I think for some of you, you might sit here and say, oh, wow. Holy cow, that is way more than I thought. Because, folks, it's not a ripple here today. It is very much a wave that's occurring, and it is beginning to really start to curl. This is what surfers are dying for. It's an opportunity here, and I want you to look at HSAs. We've hit this crest, right, in that wave, where there's an opportunity here for you as a benefits broker to truly take advantage, to truly be able to deliver on education and resources to assist your clients in really kind of being able to manage this rising cost in healthcare. And so what's driving this HSA growth? Okay, I'm sure many of you have clear indications of, to a large degree, why HSAs have been, as successful as they have been. But I'd still say that it's still at its infancy with where it could go. So I want to just point to, a number here, $250. So this number, if I just gave you a little time to think about, when do you think that number existed, if you were to just spend a little time? So in this particular example, this is actually a number of out-of-pocket healthcare expenditures back in 1980. Today, that has risen for an average consumer, an average individual out there, that has risen to over $1,400 in 2016. And so when you think about these expenditures, I know many of you that are on the call here today, you understand that there has been a very strong and consistent increase in the overall cost, right? I mean, here in the early part of the century, we were really hyper-focused on the rise of premiums. Premiums were growing at a much faster rate than even the out-of-pocket healthcare expenditure piece was. But there was that tipping point, right? As we hit into maybe that 2009, 2010, we really started to see the growth of out-of-pocket exposure, that financial exposure that employees, that individuals now are facing. And so that $1,400, when you look at it over the span of, over those many decades, all right, I mean, that's not too bad of a cost, but a large part of that cost, that out-of-pocket cost, has really occurred in the last 5 to 7 years. It's very dramatic. And so I want you to think about these numbers here for a second, because, consumers use several different methods for their payments. Most of the payments made for these expenditures here today are actually cash and check. So no surprise, right? Cash or check, that's what people are using on a regular basis to pay for these out-of-pocket, and credit cards, I should say. Credit cards are the, probably the most popular use for payment of these expenses. When you look at pre-tax benefit accounts, when you look at FSAs, flexible spending accounts, and health savings accounts, they're still very much marginally used in the overall spending, okay, for these expenditures. All right, but if we look at this chart, we should be thinking a little differently. There's still a very small percentage of individuals utilizing FSAs and HSAs to pay for those out-of-pocket expenditures, and yet high deductible health plans make up 53%. So HSA adoption is only covering in these high deductible health plans, roughly half. Half is where the adoption is coming in. So under a company or an entity called Healthcare Trends Institute, they state that 53% of employers now offer a high deductible health plan, which is up from 39% in 2015. That is a very strong increase of employers who are adopting a high deductible health plan. In 2018, which is just next year, folks, it is projected to be at a 75% adoption rate. So actually, we're growing just not just by a little, but we're exponentially seeing this growth move from a non-high deductible health plan over to a high deductible health plan. And so clearly, this strong adoption rate by employers will lead to a large growth in HSAs. Okay. But I think for a lot of you out there, and I'm going to say for myself, I'll include myself here in this. I mean, I truly felt that, okay, we're moving to a high deductible health plan, so all right, I mean, I guess we just need an account, right? And I really thought of it as just an account, really for the here and now. That we're just focused on, my needed expenses today. But I want you to think a little differently here because others are thinking a little differently on how to use a health savings account. But before I show that here, I do want to sit here and say that as you think about these consumers that are dealing with these out-of-pocket expenditures, there is actually a study by creditcards.com, and it says that 38%, which is the largest amount of worry that individuals are having, that Americans are losing sleep over the cost of health care more than any other money worries. Amazing, right? So 38% toss and turn over healthcare and insurance bills. And healthcare costs are one of the 3 major drivers of delinquencies in consumer credit alone. So you've got to begin to think of HSAs a little differently. We just can't go back to this slide here and say, well, okay, my employer or as an individual, I have a high deductible health plan, so therefore I need an HSA for my expenses here and now. Many employers are thinking a little differently. They're actually thinking about retirement. Huh? HSAs and retirement? Yeah. So according to the Plan Sponsor Council of America, Over 75% of employers surveyed view the HSA as a part of their retirement benefit strategy. Let me just say that again. 75% of employers view the HSA as part of their retirement benefit strategy. HSAs, if you look in the state of Florida alone, all right, they are literally fourth in the nation for HSA account holders. Why? There's a lot of those account holders that are nearing or at retirement, and they've been able to actually capitalize on the investment of those HSA accounts over the last many years. So HSAs, if you think about HSAs, they're clearly for use of the here and now. We need to be able to put money away. We need to be able to use those funds for the existing expense and exposure that myself and my family are having at this current moment. But HSAs are also probably, maybe arguably, one of the best kept retirement savings secrets. All right, so we're going to try to change your line of thought here a little bit in regards to HSAs and where most employers are thinking them as a retirement vehicle. I also want you to think of this. So here's a nest egg, right? This individual here just broke their nest egg. And so you're probably wondering what this $143,000 number means. So according to the Employee Benefit Research Institute, a 65-year-old man would need $127,000 in savings, while a 65-year-old woman would need $143,000 in savings, and that's thanks to a longer lifespan. But that gives them, okay, that amount, so this $143,000, let's say for a 65-year-old woman, it gives them a 90% chance of having enough savings to cover healthcare expenses in retirement. So it's not quite at the 100% level. And so when you think about, your savings and what people can put away, whether it be in their IRAs, whether it be in their 401ks, they truly need to think about an additional vehicle that can have similar investment results, but yet be so much more, you're so much more advantaged to utilize an HSA in retirement versus maybe one of those other strategies or one of those other vehicles. So clearly we understand today, and as Brooke will get into it here with you here in just a second, workers are clearly not estimating how much healthcare will cost them in retirement. In fact, 81% have not even estimated this cost. And they do say, and it's maybe not a shock, but millennials are the most likely to underestimate healthcare costs in retirement, but yet they should be the ones that are saving the most, here right now at such their young age. So as we think about the growth, if we go back to 2004, and as many of you know, PrimePay, we are our core service over the last 30 plus years now has been payroll. And so in 2004, PrimePay began to offer a resource and an opportunity for our payroll clients to be able to utilize and capitalize on HSA accounts. And over this last decade, 12 years, we've really been able to see a strong growth in just our own HSA, development, okay? But as you look at the screen here, this is Devenir, which provides some excellent research on HSA, and they generally do an annual survey, but also a mid-year survey as well. So this is kind of in the middle of last year is when this came out. Their projections and the growth rate have always been the same. It has just grown and grown and grown and grown. But there is still an enormous opportunity. And what I want to just focus on in this slide is just look at the investments. Even though it started small and it's still relatively small, the investments are in green. But the investments are growing, and what that tells me is that individuals are seeing that cost, that future cost in retirement, and that an HSA is truly one of the most dynamic vehicles to use as it relates to retirement and their need to pay for healthcare expenses in retirement. as you communicate some strategy with your employers, I want you to just get a picture of what generally most employers are doing as it relates to contribution strategies. I think many have seen some or know of some anecdotal, evidence. Many of you know clients who are contributing, who are not contributing. But I wanted to paint this picture because, a vast majority of employers are making contributions to the HSAs of their employees. So employer contribution strategies, as you see it there on the slide, 59% of employers from 1 to 49 offer HSAs. So this is just to give some perspective from a, small to a little larger. I didn't want to go any larger than 199 because after you get to 199 or over 200, it generally is sitting in that 70, 75, 76, 77% number of those employers who are offering HSAs. So almost two-thirds, we're not quite to two-thirds of small employers are offering HSAs, but over 73%, so really three-quarters of employers from 50 to 199 offer HSAs. But did you know that 80% of those employers, that offer HSAs contribute to an HSA? 8 out of 10 employers will contribute. And I wanted to provide some commentary there in relation to, well, what are they or how are they contributing? Because I'll hear that a lot, right? An employer, do they want to front load the contribution? Oh, if they front load the contribution and that employee leaves, I could lose that money, right? So, but when you look at the numbers, the majority of employers are front-loading the contribution early in the year, so that if they're contributing X dollar amount, a fixed dollar amount, most of them, 40%, are actually contributing it from day one, the beginning of that year, if you will. 30% then are contributing each pay period. And then the others kind of round out, whether they're contributing on even I didn't put it, but a quarterly basis or semi-annually, and then 10% contribute on a monthly basis. This is great information to have because I think as you are speaking with your employers and trying to provide additional commentary in relation to, well, here's some best practices. Here's what most employers are doing today. And if you're competing with some specific labor, you're fighting for labor, you're trying to attract the best talent, certainly keep the ones you have, you're going to want to somewhat provide some best practices in the industry. And when you have 8 out of 10 employers are contributing to an HSA, your clients should give some thought in regard to that. So before I bring Brooke on, I just want to touch on just the final, just foundational pieces of what makes the HSA so special. And I basically summed this up just in 5 areas, right? So the beauty of an HSA is the first thing that I popped up here. It's an individual account, right? The employee can come and go. They can leave the employer, come back. They can go to another employer. It doesn't matter. This is their own individual account. This gives the employee freedom and flexibility because it provides excellent portability in relation to moving from one employer to another, being able to really take that account as their own, that personal account, and then really manage it themselves. And so it's fluid, it's flexible, which is a wonderful thing. You don't get that, right, in a flexible spending plan or, quite frankly, most group benefits that an employer offers. The employee-employer participation, as I just showed you, 8 out of 10 employers are contributing to the HSA for those individuals. It is so important, in our opinion, that we have both of those entities, that the individual and the employer organization participating in this great actually investment, right? An employer today matches dollars generally in a 401k. I don't know, maybe contributions to an HSA could be thought of in the same vein, right? What a great tool to be used. The maximum contribution. There are certainly limitations in an FSA. There's generally caps that are involved with many of these pre-tax benefit accounts. But today, the HSA actually has a pretty nice a maximum where the employee has the freedom, not the commitment, right, as say in an FSA where you're committed to that election for the entire year, but you also not only have a higher contribution amount, but you have greater flexibility as to how you might contribute to that account over time. You also have unlimited rollover. Forget about $500, the max for an FSA, or maybe simply just a grace period. Look, if you don't use this money, let that money roll over from year to year, gain interest, invest it, grow that amount to when you're going to need it. That is a huge feature and benefit of the health savings account. And then lastly, I think I've said this before, but it does have to be told again, that the HSA is the only account, the only vehicle that provides a triple tax-free, certainly for health care or qualified medical out-of-pocket expenses. So free from federal tax, from state tax, money, it's free going in, it grows tax-free, and that money also comes out tax-free when distributions need to be made. These 5 features and benefits, if you're not talking about them and bringing them to life, not only for the employer, but certainly for the employee, I mean, as you can hear in my voice, I get energized by talking about it. You can really, truly bring to life the true benefit of an HSA, and they truly make up the foundation of what an HSA is all about. So an HSA is actually much more. Again, it's not just an account. It does need to be thought of a little differently. And I want to bring Brooke now here into the picture as she kind of digs deeper into some of this empowerment, this consumerism that is actually very important as we think about health savings accounts. So Brooke, I will turn this over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve. I'm really, really happy to be here. Excited for the opportunity to talk about one of my favorite things, which is consumer-driven healthcare and HSAs. So very, very energetic and love talking about this. I believe that consumer-driven healthcare might be a logical solution to our well of a healthcare problem. Sorry for the pun, but we got to keep the ocean, the wave theme going. But really for that strategy to work, we've got to do it right. We really have to teach Americans about HSAs, how to use them, how to get the most out of their dollar, because as we're seeing, if we build it, they will come, doesn't translate yet to these accounts. And that's because with these consumer-driven health plans, we're putting the individual, the consumers, in the driver's seat, and they're responsible for lowering cost, improving health, and starting on the path towards a healthy life. But the formula that we're talking about, financial accountability, empowerment, bringing about lower cost, that financial accountability that we're putting on the consumers, aka employees, is probably the first time they've had this financial accountability ever. So they have to understand this high deductible health plan and the consumer directed account, an HSA that we're talking about today. They have new financial accountability. How do these work? As Steve mentioned, a lot of employers do provide incentives to participate in the high deductible health plan or in the HSA, but not all do. But there's still a lot of attraction from employees towards these plans because they see the lower premiums that they have to pay and the other great benefits of the HSA that Steve talked about. So to this financial accountability, we mix in empowerment. We talk about empowering the account holders, the consumers, so that they have the necessary information and tools to make informed health decisions. The formula adds in, the idea goes that as consumers become engaged in their healthcare decisions and spending through various communications that you can see their tools and programs, she will start to become a savvier consumer. She'll seek out providers with the best healthcare, the best outcomes at the lowest cost. When she's at her provider's office, she'll talk about lower cost treatment alternatives. And so best of all, she's enrolled in her carrier's health disease management program. Her asthma's under control, and she's doing well. So the thought formula, you place financial accountability, you mix in empowerment, we lead to lower cost and better health. So we spark behavior changes within our participants. They're making better decisions about their health, their healthcare spending, and enjoying greater healthcare quality, and they're on the road to this healthy life. And it's a nice formula. I like it, but I think what we really have to look at today is the practicality and say, is this the real scenario? And how close are we coming to this model? And not probably surprising to a lot of us on this call, in reality, the real healthcare consumer just simply doesn't have a clue about health coverage in HSA. They're not making the informed decisions that are going to lead to the lower cost and the better health. And as Steve pointed out, they are not funding their HSAs to the max. And I'll tell you why I think this is so. So when we look at consumer engagement levels, when consumers make large purchases, so when I'm buying my next car, a big screen TV, a cell phone, we find that consumers are 40 to 50% more engaged when they're buying their car. They're making that decision on their cell phone, the big screen TV, than when they're purchasing health care. But the funny thing is, sometimes our healthcare expenditure is going to be more than the car that we're looking at buying. A few more things to consider about who is the real healthcare consumer today. When surveyed, 66% of consumers are stressed out by their out-of-pocket costs. They might find it the most stressful aspect of managing their healthcare. Consider that 50% of consumers don't know how to budget for future out-of-pocket healthcare costs, which is what we're asking them to do. 23% are saving just for the plan year, and most aren't funding for their health savings for future years. They're underfunding their health savings account. So we might wonder, are we destined to wipe out on this HSA wave? Are we going to be like this poor soul and face planting into this wave? Or is there hope? Is there a way for us to learn to surf the HSA wave? We can't stop the wave. That's what we're talking about today. But can we learn to surf it so that our participants, our consumers are engaged and they know what to do with these? And I think that we can, but we really have to look at the obstacles to consumer-driven health engagement and create strategies around each one so that we can break through them. So starting with the plan design and the solution, is it the right one? Does it fit for the employees? Are you trying to put a square peg in a round hole? We've got to address the lack of trust in the information consumers receive. We find that they don't always trust information from their employer or their health carrier, that they most frequently most trust information from their friends and family. Well, guess what? Friends and family are getting the same information from their friends and family. So we really have to address that obstacle. We've got to look at the tools that we're giving our account holders. Do they have the tools at all, or do they have some tools that we need to address the missing features? Other obstacles to engagement, the lack of incentives. So if you put money in HSA account for your participants, for your employees, they're going to have an account that definitely will increase your penetration rate. But how do we continue to draw them in? The lack of what we call relevant, standardized content, the communications that we're sending to employees about how the plan works or these accounts work, what their responsibilities are, how to manage it. And I think probably the biggest obstacle that we're facing is just the lack of fluency when it comes to consumer-driven health. So with all of these obstacles in mind, we're looking at our formula. How do we create a formula similar to what I presented earlier, the formula of financial accountability, empowerment, leading to lower cost and better health? How can we wrap that into our formula for consumer-driven health? And we've come up with education plus support will lead to a better experience. And I want to really talk to you about these three, the equation, and what we're doing here at PrimePay. So we'll start with education. That's where it all starts. And arguably, the most important CDH tool is money in the HSA account. So we have to educate account holders and non-account holders year-round. We can't educate, we can't communicate with individuals simply at open enrollment. It's got to be a year-round communication strategy. And if we're only communicating to account holders, we're missing, depending on the employer group, a large majority of individuals who should be participating. So our focus is to communicate to account holders and non-account holders alike. So the account holders remember, they're reminded that they're missing out on an important benefit. So we too have to teach them how to surf this HSA wave, teach them the rules and how to win at the consumer-driven game. And we've got to use multimedia channels. So it can't all be print. It can't all be email. Where do videos come in? Where do segmented communications to account holders come into this? Part of the education, as Steve has mentioned, has to focus on the short-term benefits of these programs, such as the premium savings, the tax savings, a great account to manage your healthcare costs. But we really have to tie in the long-term benefit as well. I get really excited talking about HSAs because of the long-term benefits they provide. 401ks are great. They're fantastic. They've been around for a long time. But never can I take money out of my 401k in retirement and not pay taxes. But my HSA will provide me several opportunities to take money out of that account tax-free. So tying that long-term thought in as well is something that we're looking to do. And then probably most importantly, we really have to tackle the fear factor. I talked about the emotions that consumers feel about these accounts or their healthcare in general, and fear is one of the major feelings that they feel. They fear not having enough money to pay for their family's healthcare costs. They fear they're not saving enough for that $100,000 plus amount that they know they're going to have to pay, because they don't know what that dollar amount really should be. So we feel, how do you overcome fear? You address it. So we're looking at how we can help account holders or non-account holders overcome the fear of unexpected expenses by helping them segment expenses into things that are inside their control and outside their control. And, you know, we do our best to plan, so help them find ways to start saving. When we tie in the support component, you'll find that we really focus a lot in the beginning on account management support. As Steve pointed out, and I think it bears repeating, the account holder, aka the consumer, aka the employee, they own the HSA, and these are bank accounts. And I think we forget that, or we lose sight of that sometimes. And the only way the account holder can truly manage the account is they have to get engaged. They have to know how to check their balance. They have to know how and where to use the debit card. And for times that the debit card doesn't work, it's not the best option, they have to know how to easily reimburse themselves or pay the provider through online bill pay. And we need to really focus on getting account holders to opt in to proactive notifications and alerts. So if I sound like I'm talking about a bank account or your own bank account and management support tools, alerts that you've set up with your personal bank account, it's because it comes back, these are bank accounts. From there, we can promote other tools. But again, getting that online account management, we feel is imperative to them successfully taking on this new responsibility and navigating what they need, how they're going to manage their health care. So other support that we'll provide are calculators. We have calculators available now to determine your tax savings, to compare a high deductible health plan to a non-high deductible health care. What do my out-of-pocket costs look like? Eligible expenses. What's eligible to be paid from my HSA? And, unlike FSAs, which is a use it or lose it, so we're looking at how to spend that money, HSAs take on the entirely opposite. If I don't spend it, it's mine. So how do we provide retail discounts to our account holders so they can buy those everyday necessities, the healthcare items that they need, but at a lower cost? And so, right now we partner with HSA Store. We're looking at how do we offer, expand these tools. And we think about, I mentioned earlier, that ideal healthcare consumer who is, they need a procedure and they're looking at who provides that procedure, what's the cost, what's the best outcome. So I think that's something that fits in well with our strategy with HSAs, or how do we, PrimePay, offer such tools so that the cost comparison is easier, there's more transparency in locating who provides the best service at the lower cost. So that's something we're looking at for the future. But if you or your client has disease management programs, health management programs that we need to tie into the HSA communications, we can help promote those. We just need to know what tools are available and what that message needs to be. So we feel that this formula, this new consumer-driven formula, where education is at the front and center, hyper-focus on support, will lead to a better experience for everyone. And then we will see that new healthcare consumer emerge, the person I'm finally going to figure this healthcare stuff out, and the person who is fully engaged in the process. They're making informed decisions when selecting health coverage, choosing providers and services, and managing wellness, and they're building wealth for the future. So that's the new healthcare consumer that we all want to see. But just to add on, as we wrap up and head things over to Steve, I mentioned at the start that I do believe that consumer-driven healthcare could be a logical solution to the healthcare problem in America. But if we truly believe that it is going to be a long-term solution, we also have to be open to it evolving to meet the needs of the next generation of healthcare consumers. Because just as surfing evolved, so too should consumer-driven health. We have to remain open to change because great ideas always evolve and get better. Just as the surfers way back when took to the street, to the land, and turned those surfboards into skateboards, I'd love to see where we continue to evolve on the consumer-driven health as well. So I'll turn that back over to Steve for him to continue on to the presentation. But I really am honored and privileged to share some thoughts with you today, and I appreciate the time.
Oh, Brooke, thank you so much. There actually have been some really good questions that have come in, and I do want to just focus on a couple of these here that I think are kind of speak to what you were asking, or what your message is. One of the concerns is certainly around transparency and the education piece, and I'm going to tie in two questions here together. One from Joe, which was a comment on, we need to be able to better educate the employee or educate to the employee that a doctor visit does not cost 25 bucks, right? So kind of that age-old, like getting a better understanding of what true costs actually are. But also to just dovetail that, Joe, into Britt's comment about transparency. And Britt kind of says, transparency seems to be that missing piece of the puzzle. And he's wondering, do you think transparency will become an industry trend, or do we need to legislate it to actually make this thing finally happen? And wanted to just get your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think both questions are great questions, and I agree that, yes, if you are introducing these types of plans for the first time, you're going to have to educate employees that a doctor visit does not cost $25. For groups out there that have an HRA in place and they were not as shielded, the plan participants were not as shielded from the true cost, it might not be as big of a bridge for you to cross. But if you've got co-pays and a standard PPO type plan, no deductible copay plans, yes, it's going to be a shock to individuals when they find out that $25 will not get you in to see a doctor. I can't take my dog to the vet for $25, so I certainly can't go see a healthcare professional. As the transparency question, I agree. I think this is a piece of the puzzle that we're going to have to bring in, and the insurance carriers are going to have to play, because they hold the negotiated rate. There are some companies out there that are doing some mining and giving averages for a certain area, but not always the true dollar cost. It's more of an average. Do I think we're going to have legislation come down to force insurance carriers? I think that's a great question that I would love to have with Britt over coffee or something sometimes, because it's a very deep question. I have seen if there's enough of a shift, enough people demanding, pushing insurance carriers to provide this information, then I think they will. But it's going to take some pressure from a critical mass of thought leaders to make it happen. But I have talked to some insurance carriers that get it, so to speak, and see that this is where we're headed. And so if we all feel this is a logical solution and that is a key missing piece, then I think a lot of them will come around, probably the smaller regional ones at first, just to remain competitive and to be a differentiator. So anything that you would want to add to that, Steve?
No, I mean, I agree. I think the one word that I guess comes to mind with what I see there is progress, maybe gradual progress with this, but progress nonetheless. We've had a strong decade of strong HDHP, high deductible health plan growth, and HSA growth, and yet it seems like some of that technology hasn't, the adoption rate of that hasn't quite made it yet. And but there are signs of life and light out there, and we do know that there are some interesting pieces of technology, these solutions that are being looked at, that there's actually some investments being made that will enable greater transparency in this market. So I think all of us here, including myself, I'm waiting. I'm dying to see some of this additional technology actually in use. It is needed, and certainly, but it is coming. I think we are making some progress, and you will see some new technology being introduced, in this year, but over the next 2 to 3 years, I think it'll be pretty dramatic. One last question here before I go into my final piece then here today. It was a good question, and I've seen a few people ask this. It's in regard to the new fiduciary language. So we're going to get a little on the technical side here, Brooke. or just vice versa from consumerism. But Joe brings up a good question, or utilize Joe's question here. Question has come up, do we as agents have a fiduciary responsibility when offering an HSA? And I can certainly lend some comment to that, but Brooke, want your comments. As most of you know, just to provide a basis to all, there's new fiduciary rules that were originally scheduled to come here, 30 days ago, something like that. I forget the exact date here, actually, myself. I have is it April 10th or something in my head? I don't know if it was that exact date, but they had delayed it actually for a 60-day period. So here at the beginning of June is actually when these new fiduciary rules will come into play. And the fiduciary rules, whether intended or not, does have an impact on HSAs, but more appropriately on the investments, on that side of things. And Brooke, did you want to make just some comments in regard to either calming any fears or just providing guidance there from a broker, a benefits broker and consultant? Where do they sit in that fiduciary rule, at least as it relates to HSAs?
Yeah, and since we are still waiting for that to come into place, I've been kind of watching and waiting, and I have, maybe it's not realistic, but I have some hope that the current administration will help alleviate some of the pressure that it comes with offering guidance to participants on that. So we'll see what happens on that. I know you're going to touch on that on the legislative updates as well, to see how fearful are we going to need to be when it comes to guidance. Because I remember when that first came out, scratching my head and going, well, we're not offering any investment advice. We're not offering tax advice. We're just presenting the rules as they exist today. So, you're welcome to tag on to that and offer any other thoughts you have.
Yeah, so just to give a little, I said here as I did my bullets here for today on this legislative update, I totally failed actually to put the bullets in for the fiduciary aspects. I don't even have it in here, but I can provide some guidance. So thank you, Joe, and others there for asking this question, because it has come up. There's been some confusion, I think, in regard to benefits brokers and their, am I going to be acting now as a fiduciary because I'm recommending an HSA trustee or a bank, that to my employer client, and now that employer is going to offer it to their individuals. Can employers even do that? And I think what you want to think about is this: are you as a benefits broker, are you involved in the investment aspect? Are you providing advice? Are you receiving a revenue share or commissions on that investment? If you are tied to those two things in relation to the investments that are found within or provided within that HSA account, then you clearly, under the current existing structure of the rules, you would be found as a fiduciary. And you do want to be very conscientious of that. I would say for the vast amount of benefits brokers here today, though, you are not providing advice in regard to the investments within that account. You are not receiving revenue or commissions based on the investment choices that individual makes. So in that aspect, you are able, PrimePay is able, an employer for that matter, is able to recommend an HSA, banking opportunity account to, for an employer to do their due diligence, to be able to recommend a specific trustee for that account. An employer absolutely, or you as a benefits broker, can absolutely make that recommendation, and you would not fall under that specific fiduciary rule. So do you understand, and I'm sorry that I didn't get my bullets actually up here for that today, but do you understand that I would say, golly, 99% of you out there today would not fall under that fiduciary rule in regards to the HSAs. All right, so real quick, very quickly, I just want to touch on a couple things. We talk about this rise, this tidal wave, right? That's coming, I think, or that is here, kind of, but it is coming. That ripple has grown into a pretty big wave, and due to some of the proposals that are actually out there today, and some with some strong bipartisan support, and I'm not talking about the American Health Care Act, and that's a little more partisan, right? But there's pieces and parts that are really bipartisan, and one of those areas is the structure to really expand how HSAs are being used today. So what, I'll just speak to the American Health Care Act here right now. What that's meant to do is to increase choice, reduce cost, provide greater flexibility, expand consumer choices. And as part of at least the American Health Care Act and certainly some of the other proposals, it strengthens the consumer-directed health care accounts, which is the HSA. And so what they want to do is expand the access to HSAs. And what it would do is nearly double the maximum HSA contribution, and the contribution level would be set to the deductible and out-of-pocket levels, which right now here in 2017 is $6,550 for individuals and $13,100 for families. So instead of the existing structure of contribution maximums today, they would nearly be doubled. Well, what does that mean for 401k and retirement plans? I mean, there is some discussion that if HSAs actually go to those levels, that they might lower the contribution caps even to retirement plans. So that's how strong of an emphasis that they're putting on these health savings accounts. They're also talking about helping older couples. As you know, there's a 55 and older catch-up contribution, and they also want to allow spousal catch-up contributions to be made as well, okay, along with that. And they also want to remove some of the restrictions, and one of those meaning that it would also include a special rule for certain medical expenses incurred before the establishment of the HSA. If you guys had forgotten, or if you remember, any expenses that are incurred prior to the HSA being opened and funded are not eligible. So the sooner, and we always strongly drive the education, open up that account, fund it right away with a penny, right? Get the money in the account. That way you can start submitting, or your expenses will begin to qualify right away. So they're talking about removing that restriction. They're also talking about Roth HSAs, much like Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, where you may pay taxes going in, but it's tax-free going out. So they're talking about actually maybe removing the qualified, non-qualified use of HSAs, okay, where you can only establish an HSA if you're in a health plan that qualifies for it. They're now talking about really opening that accessibility to those accounts much, much more. And that's why when you look at what Devenir is predicting, just to kind of show again what they're expecting, they see asset growth just in 2016 of 21%, but they see the growth of assets growing to $50 billion, consisting of over 27 million accounts. Folks, in 2016, we were only at 20 million accounts. So the exposure, the opportunity is really, really strong. So I hope that through what Brooke has discussed in consumerism, really bringing that accountability, the financial accountability of those medical expenses, which we can't avoid, we have to take accountability of that. Adding to that the empowerment piece, which is so critical to the account, I think that individuals certainly will have a much better experience. And so I want you to think a little differently here as we talk about sales strategies here just a little bit. As you know, here at PrimePay, we have stated this several times. It is a passion here at PrimePay, but we firmly believe that every group health plan must be paired with a pre-tax benefit account. An HSA is one of the most unique accounts, but it comes with it that communication challenge, right? being able to communicate it, but it's also that call to action piece, that, that true engagement and that empowerment, and what strategies could exist to truly assist the employer, but certainly also the employee who is dealing with that financial impact as well. So communication strategy. We cannot say it enough. We have done it now for a decade. We put a lot of emphasis on education. The education is not just, folks, about the account, right? I mean, I showed you those 5 main features of an HSA. Oh, vastly important. You want to communicate that. But you really need to communicate a message and an education about that spending now, the saving aspect, but even that spending later. Really thinking about kind of expanding that knowledge of future, and for a certainty, those healthcare costs that are going to come in retirement. Again, $140,000 that's needed just at retirement or throughout retirement for healthcare costs. What you may not have been pushing or stating enough is I would talk more openly about why an employer must contribute to an HSA, at least out of the gate. Get something seeded, get something started. Begin as an employer, as 75% of employers are, begin to think about an HSA as a retirement offering and benefit versus just simply, just simply an account that is utilized by the individuals. And really think about what employers are doing today. They have a retirement plan match today. They could easily have an HSA account match as well under Section 125 and through their cafeteria plan. So a couple call to action strategies as well as we end up. One thing to recommend, I love this idea and I don't believe that it's being communicated. Now, not all employees, not all individuals have an IRA, that is a fact, but many individuals do. And there's one way to really jumpstart the HSA balance, that if that individual has a traditional IRA, they are allotted one time a tax-free rollover from that IRA to the HSA. Now, why would they do that? Well, under a traditional IRA, any monies that come out of that IRA are going to be taxed in some form or fashion, right? There's going to be some federal tax structure to that, no matter what it is. They're also going to be required to take a minimum distribution out of that IRA at a certain age in retirement. With an HSA, this money, although it may come out taxable in certain areas for certain expenses, it is completely tax-free for healthcare, for qualified medical expenses, and it imposes no restrictions or requirements in relation to when you have to pull that money out. That money now becomes very portable, flexible, usable, and even more so tax-free when it comes out for those much-needed healthcare expenses. So think about that. What you also want to think, the power, and I love this type of a strategy, but pair the HSA with an HRA. Many of these high deductible health plans they're larger deductibles, and if an HRA comes at the tail end of that deductible, it truly helps that employee or that individual who has just a crazy healthcare year. They are struggling with just a tremendous amount of just debt or expenses from healthcare expenses in a given year because of that deductible. That HRA can truly come in and save the day, but that HRA cannot begin reimbursing until that minimum deductible has been satisfied. So one of the questions that has come in today was, can a client have an HRA with an HSA? And the answer is yes, but the HSA needs to come first and make sure that no reimbursements are made with that HRA until that minimum federal deductible has been satisfied. There's also a strategy where there's a lot of older Americans, right? Senior Americans that are still working today, and employers who may be contributing to an HSA for their employees, they cannot make a contribution for those 65 and older because of the Medicare restriction. So, well, Can't an employer provide a benefit in some form or fashion for medical expenses for that employee who's 65 and older? Absolutely. And that can be done in the form of an HRA. So that's another pairing of an HSA with an HRA. One of the other questions that have also come in is, can you pair an HSA with an FSA? Now, in that question, I don't have a bullet for that, but the answer is yes, but with a caveat. You can have a standard HSA, utilize the HSA as much as you need, contribute to the maximum, and then you could also have what's called a limited use FSA, where the FSA is only reimbursing for dental and vision expenses. Okay, so you can pair an HSA and a limited use FSA together, but not a general FSA. So the key thing when we think about a call to action strategy, I mean, here at the end of the day, your employers need to be in it at 100%. Like, be in it in a meaningful way or not at all. So you've got to educate like crazy. But what we tend to do with HSAs, and I hope, you know, as Brooke spoke, kind of shared some ways to simplify, but you really don't have to overly complicate it. There are so many wonderful tools, resources, opportunities like an HSAstore.com to be able to get valuable information in order for you to better manage that account. So, you know, education is critical because that's going to drive better participation and satisfaction in the overall benefit that the employer is providing. So truly focus a lot more time on that education piece because it's going to be so much influential and positive down the road as that employee is actually utilizing the account and distributing those dollars in the account over time. So I can't thank you guys enough for attending here today. We believe here at PrimePay that the HSA tidal wave is absolutely coming, and it's coming with some great force. The Trump administration might make some proposals come into reality that could make HSAs at the forefront, and you need to be proactive. Begin having stronger discussions, business conversations with your clients around this issue because, right, most of your clients have a health plan that is conducive to an HSA. And if not, you should have these conversations to see how, you know, for the next renewal season, maybe we need to be moving in this direction, okay? Because the HSA, based on certain proposals, can be much more advantageous to folks, all individuals. So with that, I want to conclude our webinar. Hopefully I tackled through our conversation here a lot of questions that had come in. We thank you for your participation. I want you to seek out our Broker Concierge program. We have a tremendous amount of Broker Concierge briefs, sales primers, content and information surrounding HSAs. We would love to provide to you additional content, and we do provide that within our broker portal for our partners. You have 100% access to all of our library content, and we want you to go after that. We're going to be updating some new HSA kind of material so that you can even more adequately go out to your clients and be able to practically apply what you've learned certainly here today. So we ask you in the follow-up email, we will be providing the recording link to the webinar here today. And again, for our BC exclusive partners, please go and access directly in the portal, and the slide deck and recording and other information will be posted there as well. We're going to begin. I want to invite you to our next webinar, which will be on June 7th, where we're going to kick off kind of a summer series of webinars. And so look for an invite here soon, kind of on some of the key topics that we will be covering on here this summer. Thank you for attending. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to sit with us today. Have a great day, and that will conclude our webinar. Have a good one.